The rain poured hard over the glittering streets of Lagos, lightning tearing across the sky as though heaven itself was watching. At the golden gates of a billionaire's mansion, an old woman stood shivering, her wrapper soaked, her hands trembling, yet her voice still pleading. She was not a beggar, not a stranger. She was his mother. Inside the mansion, wealth glittered, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a wife with a heart as cold as glass. And in that terrible moment, torn between pride and love, the billionaire made a choice that would change everything. His hand rose, his mother stumbled, and the sound of betrayal echoed louder than the thunder that night. But Lagos is a city of whispers. One slap would not remain behind closed doors. It would spread across the streets, burn through the markets, and shake the foundations of his empire. And the woman he thought he had silenced? Her prayers in the rain would rise higher than all his wealth. This is not just the story of money. It is the story of a son's betrayal, a mother's dignity, and the price of forgetting where you came from. The rain came down in heavy sheets, drumming against the wide streets of Lekki like angry fists from the sky. Streetlights flickered weakly, fighting the storm's darkness, while the sound of thunder rolled over the gated mansions with golden fences and palm-lined driveways. Outside one of the most breathtaking homes on the avenue, a white-painted mansion with towering columns and iron gates plated in gold, stood an elderly woman. Her name was Olivia Johnson, 62 years old, worn from years of labor and sacrifice. The rain soaked her patched Ankara dress until it clung to her fragile frame, and her wrapper, tied tight at the waist, sagged heavy with water. Balanced on her head was a small traveling bag, the kind she had carried all her life whenever she moved between struggles. Her lips trembled as she stared at the mansion, the house her son owned, the house her blood, her hunger, her sacrifices had built. "Maxwell, my son," she whispered, her voice breaking as the rain mixed with her tears. At the door, Maxwell Johnson appeared. He was not the little boy who once walked barefoot through Mushin's narrow alleys. He was now Lagos' most celebrated billionaire tech genius. The man who transformed from slum boy to CEO, from dust to diamonds. His face was sharp, his jaw tight, his designer suit glowing even in the storm's dim light. But his eyes were cold, distant. Behind him, Sophia emerged. She was everything Lagos society admired, tall, elegant, draped in a flowing Italian gown that hugged her perfect figure. Diamonds sparkled at her neck and wrist, her hair styled into glossy perfection. Yet her heart was harder than the storm. She folded her arms, her lips curled in disgust. "She didn't call," Sophia hissed, glaring at Olivia as if she were a pest. "She didn't even tell us she was coming. This is not a village, Maxwell. People don't just barge into Lekki homes like traders in a market square." Olivia's knees weakened. Her own son had not even spoken yet. She shifted her bag from her head, clutched it against her chest, and pleaded. "Maxwell, my child. I came because I missed you. I cooked your favorite soup. I carried it all the way here. You haven't visited in months. I only wanted to see your face." For a fleeting moment, Maxwell's lips twitched, as if the child in him still remembered her cracked hands stirring smoky pots of beans over firewood. But Sophia's sharp voice cut through his hesitation like a blade. "Maxwell, she is embarrassing you. Look at her, soaked like a beggar at our doorstep. If anyone sees this, the press will have a field day. Tell her to leave." Maxwell's jaw clenched. His throat tightened, but he refused to meet his mother's eyes. Instead, in a voice flat and cold, he said, "Mama, I'm sorry. You should have told us. You can't stay here like this. This is not the time." Olivia gasped, stepping forward. Her hand trembled as she reached for him, as she had done since his first steps as a child. "Maxwell, please." And then it happened. With a swift motion, his palm struck her cheek. The sound cracked through the compound, louder than the thunder. The slap sent her stumbling backward into the rain, her bag tumbling into a puddle. The mansion guards froze. The maids watching from the shadows gasped. But nobody moved. Nobody dared. Sophia smirked. The golden gates closed slowly, sealing Olivia out. Maxwell turned his back, his face unreadable, his body stiff as stone. Olivia stood alone, rain sliding down her face, her body shivering. But it wasn't the rain that broke her. It was betrayal. She tilted her head upward, toward the stormy sky, her lips quivering as a prayer broke free from her chest. "Oh God," she whispered, voice trembling with pain. Is this the child I carried on my back through the mud of Mushin? Is this the boy I starved for? Oh God, see me now. Thunder cracked again. The city lights flickered. And in that moment, the heavens seemed to listen. Before the mansion, before the Rolls Royces and chauffeurs, before the polished marble floors and golden gates, there was Mushin. The year was 1992. Mushin was not the Lekki of elites. It was dust, noise, and survival. Narrow streets where open gutters overflowed with rainwater and children with bare feet chased each other between broken kiosks. Traders shouted, car horns blasted, and the smell of fried akra and roasted corn mixed with the stench of refuse. Olivia Johnson lived in a single-room face-me-I-face-you compound with her only child, Maxwell. The room was small, with a rusted zinc roof that leaked whenever it rained. Their mattress was thin and shared, their belongings stacked in one corner, and their cooking pots blackened from years of firewood. Yet, within those walls lived a love richer than gold. Every morning before sunrise, Olivia would rise quietly, so as not to wake Maxwell. She tied her faded wrapper, set water on the fire, and prepared akra to sell at the roadside. Her hands bore burns and scars from hot oil, but she never complained. By dawn, she would balance her wooden tray on her head, carrying a basin of fried akra balls, pepper sauce, and bread. Maxwell, then only 6 years old, would walk beside her, his uniform washed thin but neatly ironed. His slippers were worn until the straps flapped against the ground, yet Olivia polished them with water and pride. Maxwell, she would say as they walked past laughing neighbors who mocked her poverty, do not look at the dust on our feet. Look at the stars above your head. One day, your feet will walk where dust cannot enter. Maxwell believed her. He would nod, clutching his little school bag, his eyes bright with dreams larger than Mushin's broken alleys. The sacrifices came quietly but painfully. On days when customers were few, Olivia would pretend she had eaten already so Maxwell could have the last portion of beans or yam. At night, when he slept, she would mend his torn uniforms by lantern light, her eyes straining, her fingers aching. There were nights she cried silently, her back turned to him, when hunger gnawed at her stomach. But when Maxwell stirred, she quickly wiped her tears and sang softly, her cracked voice carrying old Yoruba lullabies that wrapped him in comfort. Neighbors often mocked her. Olivia, you're wasting your time, one woman sneered. Sending a Mushin boy to school? He will only end up like the rest, chasing danfos at the park. But Olivia never wavered. My son will sit in an office one day, she replied. He will wear a suit, not slippers. He will not end where I began. And Maxwell saw it too. Though poor, his mother's fire burned into him. He studied harder than most, staying back after school, borrowing books from anyone who would lend him. His teachers whispered of his brilliance, his gift for numbers, his quick grasp of machines. On evenings when he returned from school, he would sit by his mother at her akra stand, helping count money and calculate change. Customers would marvel. This boy is sharp, Olivia. Don't let him waste. She would smile, hiding her tired eyes. He will not waste. God forbid. But poverty was a relentless enemy. There were days of sickness when she could not afford hospital bills, days when landlords threatened eviction, days when hunger pressed too close. Yet Olivia bent but never broke. She often told Maxwell stories of men who rose from nothing, men who carried Lagos on their backs with vision and will. Maxwell, she whispered one night as the rain leaked through their roof, dripping into a pan beside their bed. Remember this, life will test you. But do not forget the hand that raised you from the dust. If you honor me, you honor God. Maxwell, with sleepy eyes, nodded. I will, Mama. I promise. Her heart swelled. She kissed his forehead, unaware that years later, that very promise would shatter at the gates of a mansion in Lekki. By the time Maxwell was 26, his name had begun echoing through Lagos' rising tech community. From Mushin's dusty alleys to university halls, he had built a reputation for brilliance. He could take broken computers, assemble parts, and breathe new life into them. His first startup was born in a cramped cyber cafe, yet his ideas stretched beyond Nigeria's borders. It was at a glittering tech conference at Eco Hotel in Victoria Island that Maxwell first met Sophia Adeyemi. The ballroom was filled with the hum of wealth, power suits, designer heels, glasses of champagne clinking under golden chandeliers. For Maxwell, who still wore the modest suit his mother had saved to buy him, it felt like stepping into another world. He walked among the elites cautiously, clutching his presentation folder as though it were his lifeline. And then he saw her. Sophia moved across the room like a queen among subjects. tall, graceful, her dark skin glowing under the soft lights, her perfume leaving trails of expensive sweetness. She wore an emerald silk gown that hugged her form and diamonds that glittered like fire. Men turned to look, women whispered in envy, and yet her face was carved in calm superiority. Maxwell was drawn to her instantly. It wasn't just her beauty, it was the way she carried herself, like someone born to sit at the top of the world. When their eyes met, she offered a faint smile. It wasn't warm, but it was enough to shake Maxwell's soul. He introduced himself nervously. "I'm Maxwell Johnson. I'm building a company that can transform mobile payments across Africa." Sophia raised a brow, studying him. "Johnson?" she repeated, her voice smooth but edged. "That's interesting. You don't look like the sons of the families I know. Where are you from?" "Mushin," Maxwell replied proudly. "My mother raised me there." Sophia's smile faltered, almost disappearing. For a split second, something like disdain flashed in her eyes. But then she composed herself. "Mushin," she repeated softly, as if testing how it sounded on her tongue. "Well, we all have beginnings." The truth was, Sophia was not impressed. She was the daughter of Chief Adeyemi, a banker whose empire stretched across West Africa. She had grown up in Ikoyi mansions, vacationed in Paris, and attended private schools in London. Men of status and wealth sought her hand. But what Maxwell lacked in pedigree, he made up for in ambition, and Sophia could see his star rising. She leaned closer, her voice smooth as velvet. "Tell me, Maxwell Johnson, how do you plan to take Africa's future in your hands?" That was the spark. That was the beginning. In the weeks that followed, Sophia and Maxwell crossed paths again, at cocktail dinners, at corporate meetings, at private lounges in Victoria Island. She would laugh at his jokes, though sometimes her laughter felt calculated. She would listen to his dreams, though often she reminded him subtly of the gap between them. "You're brilliant," she told him once, her manicured fingers tapping his shoulder lightly. "But brilliance alone doesn't win Lagos. You need the right circle, the right woman, the right image." Maxwell's chest swelled. For the first time, someone outside his mother seemed to believe in his greatness. He mistook Sophia's calculated charm for love. Meanwhile, Olivia noticed the changes. Maxwell visited Mushin less frequently. When he came, he wore new suits, carried sleek phones, and his eyes wandered even as his mother spoke. She tried to remind him, "My son, no matter how far you rise, don't forget the ground you grew from. Don't let city lights blind your heart." Maxwell would smile, hug her briefly, and assure her, "Never, Mama. You're my everything." But in the back of his mind, Sophia's voice whispered louder. "You can't walk into boardrooms smelling of Mushin. You need to let go of those ties if you want to rule this city." And so the distance began to grow, not just in miles, but in heart. Lagos had never seen a rise so sharp, so dazzling, so fast. From Mushin's narrow alleys to the skyline of Victoria Island, Maxwell Johnson became the story every newspaper carried. His mobile payments company, SwiftPay Technologies, began as a small app coded on a second-hand laptop in a cyber cafe. Within 3 years, it had spread like wildfire, first to market traders, then to banks, and eventually across West Africa. He was only 30 when Forbes Africa placed his face on its cover. The boy from Mushin who rebuilt Africa's future. Billboards along Third Mainland Bridge carried his company's logo. Investors from Dubai and London flew into Lagos just to sit at his table. SwiftPay's headquarters, a glass tower overlooking the Atlantic, became a landmark. Everywhere Maxwell went, cameras flashed. Journalists hailed him as a genius, a visionary, a king of the new Lagos economy. And by his side always was Sophia. She wore her new title, Wife of Africa's Tech King, like a crown. In designer gowns, she floated beside Maxwell at banquets, her diamond necklaces catching every spotlight. To society, they were Lagos' golden couple. But beneath the glitter, the cracks began to form. For Olivia, life remained in Mushin, though her son now lived behind golden gates. She had refused his money at first, saying, "Maxwell, I don't need marble floors. All I need is your love." But he insisted, transferring funds into her account, buying her expensive clothes she never wore. Still, she noticed something unsettling. His visits became rare. When he did come, he was restless, distracted, always answering phone calls, always checking his gold wristwatch. Sophia never accompanied him to Mushin. She claimed she was too busy or not comfortable in such environments. One evening, Olivia cooked his favorite egusi soup. She stayed awake waiting, but he arrived close to midnight. He ate only a few spoons, said he had a board meeting the next day, and left with a kiss on her forehead. Maxwell, she called gently as he stepped into his black Range Rover. Don't let this city swallow your heart. A man without his roots is like a river without a source. He smiled faintly. Mama, I haven't forgotten. I never will. But in truth, he was already forgetting. Sophia's whispers grew sharper with each passing week. Maxwell, she said one morning as they ate breakfast on their marble dining table, you need to upgrade your image. All these people from Mushin, all these old ties, they don't match the life you've built. Do you want board members to laugh when they see you running to your mother in that slum? Maxwell frowned, but said nothing. The words lingered like poison in his ears. At corporate events, when asked about his background, he began to edit his story. He spoke proudly of SwiftPay, proudly of Sophia, proudly of Lekki mansions. But the mention of Mushin grew smaller, softer, almost invisible. Sophia noticed. She smiled. Yet, in quiet moments, when Maxwell stood before his office windows overlooking Lagos Lagoon, memories of his childhood haunted him. The nights his mother hummed to him as the roof leaked, the mornings she fried akra with swollen feet, the promise he made never to forget her. But whenever guilt rose, Sophia's voice returned, crisp and sharp. Lekki is not Mushin. A king cannot dine with beggars. Choose your throne. And slowly Maxwell chose. He chose power. He chose image. He chose Sophia. And though Olivia did not know it yet, the distance between them was no longer just emotional. It was about to become an unbridgeable gulf. The sun was sinking over Lekki, painting the skyline in shades of gold and crimson. Luxury SUVs hummed along the palm-lined roads, their tinted windows hiding Lagos elite as they moved between boardrooms, private lounges, and gated estates. At the end of one of these pristine avenues stood Maxwell's mansion. White walls, golden gates, manicured gardens glowing under soft lights. On this evening, Olivia Johnson stood outside those gates, clutching a small cooler. Inside it was a goosey soup with pounded yam, steaming and fragrant, made exactly the way Maxwell loved it as a boy. She had risen before dawn to buy the best ingredients from Mushin Market, ignoring her aching knees as she pounded yam with the strength only a mother's love could summon. Her wrapper was neatly tied, her headscarf pressed, her old sandals polished. She wanted to look presentable, not for herself, but so no one could say Maxwell's mother was a village woman shaming him. The guard at the gate frowned when he saw her. He recognized her face, but in a house where staff had been warned about uninvited visitors, he hesitated. Madam, you know tell Oga you day come? He asked nervously. I am his mother, Olivia replied softly. Does a mother need permission to see her own son? Before the guard could answer, a sleek black Mercedes glided into the driveway. Sophia stepped out, her heels clicking against the marble tiles. Her gown shimmered like liquid silver, her perfume sharp and expensive. She saw Olivia instantly, her brows arching in displeasure. What is this? Sophia's voice was cold, carrying enough authority to make even the guards stiffen. Why are you standing here with food? Olivia smiled politely, bowing slightly. Good evening, my daughter. I cooked Maxwell's favorite. He used to love a goosey with goat meat. I thought I could surprise him. Sophia's lips curled. Surprise him? This is not Mushin. This is Lekki. We don't carry coolers of soup into mansions like traders at a motor park. The words stung like fire, but Olivia swallowed her pride. Please, my daughter, it is not much. Just something small. He is working hard, and I know he forgets to eat well. Let me just give it to him. Sophia folded her arms, her eyes sharp as glass. Listen carefully. Maxwell has no need for roadside food. We have chefs who prepare meals with imported spices and the finest ingredients. Do you think he needs your village cooking? The cooler trembled in Olivia's hands. For a moment, her heart cracked, but she steadied herself, refusing to break. I am his mother, she said firmly, her voice still gentle but carrying weight. And sometimes what a man needs is not chefs or spices. Sometimes he needs a taste of home. At that moment, Maxwell's car pulled in. He stepped out, wearing a navy blue suit, his phone pressed to his ear. His eyes caught the sight of his mother at the gate, her hands full, her eyes shining with love. For a split second, something softened in him. He remembered being a boy, running home from school to the smell of her agusi soup simmering over firewood. But then he noticed Sophia watching him, her eyes sharp with judgment, waiting for his response. Maxwell, she said loudly, your mother brought soup. Again, without even calling. The silence was heavy. The guards shifted uneasily. Olivia's smile trembled, her hands tightening around the cooler. Maxwell ended his call slowly, his face caught between two worlds. The love of a mother who had given him everything, and the pride of a wife who demanded he rise above his roots. "Mama," he said finally, his tone clipped, almost businesslike. "You should have told us. This isn't how things are done here." Olivia's heart sank. But she held his gaze, refusing to let tears fall. "Maxwell, my son," she whispered, "a man who forgets how things were done in the beginning will one day forget himself." The words hung in the air like a prophecy. Sophia hissed under her breath and turned away, but Maxwell's chest tightened. He could not shake the feeling that his mother's words would one day return to him in ways he could not yet imagine. The clouds had gathered thick over Lekki that night, heavy and swollen as though the heavens themselves were holding back tears. The mansion's compound glistened under the rain, the marble steps slick, the golden columns glowing faintly from the streetlights. Olivia stood at the entrance, soaked from head to toe. Her wrapper clung to her thin body, her scarf sagged, and the small traveling bag she had carried sat at her feet. She had not come to beg for money. She had not come for gifts. She had come for what a mother always longs for, a glimpse of her child's face, a moment of warmth, a reminder that blood still means something. Inside the grand hallway, Sophia's heels clicked as she folded her arms and leaned against the wall. Her eyes narrowed with irritation. "She didn't call. She didn't even tell us she was coming," she hissed. "Maxwell, this is Lekki, not Mushin. She can't just walk in like a street hawker. You need to tell her." Maxwell stood frozen, his chest rising and falling as though a battle raged inside him. He looked at his mother, her frail frame trembling under the storm, her lips parted in prayer and pleading. For a moment he saw the Mushin nights, the lantern light, her cracked hands sewing his uniform, her voice singing lullabies. "Maxwell, my son, please," Olivia whispered, her voice breaking. "I only wanted to see you. I missed you. Even if I stand at your gate, let me see your face." Sophia's voice sharpened, each word like glass. "Maxwell, end this embarrassment now. Do you want the neighbors to see her? Do you want the press to write that Africa's tech king still entertains Mushin women at his gates?" The words dug into Maxwell's pride like daggers. The silence stretched. The storm raged. His heart thundered as hard as the skies above. And then, in one swift motion, it happened. His hand struck her cheek. The sound cracked louder than the lightning overhead. Olivia stumbled backward, her bag falling into the puddle with a splash. Her hands trembled as she touched her face, disbelief etched into her features. She had felt hunger's sting, poverty's bite, ridicule's whip, but never this. Never from the child she had carried on her back through the mud of Mushin. The guards froze. The maids at the far end of the hall gasped, their hands flying to their mouths. No one moved. No one dared. Sophia smirked faintly, her eyes cold with triumph. To her, this was order. This was control. Maxwell turned away, his face stiff, his chest heaving. He did not look back at his mother. Perhaps he could not bear to. Perhaps pride would not let him. The gates closed slowly, heavy iron shutting her out. The clang echoed through the compound like a final sentence. Olivia stood there, rain sliding down her face, mingling with her tears. She did not curse. She did not scream. She did not fight. Instead, she lifted her trembling eyes to the sky. "Oh God," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of betrayal. "See what my child has become. The boy I starved for. The boy I carried barefoot to school. See him now. See me now." The thunder roared as if in answer. The heavens themselves seemed to mourn. And in that moment, though the compound fell silent, something shifted in the city of Lagos. A slap had been delivered, not just to a mother's face, but to the spirit of family, sacrifice, and love. A slap that would echo far beyond those gates, into boardrooms, into headlines, into Maxwell's very soul. For some betrayals do not end at the hand. They begin there. The gate shut with a metallic clang that seemed to split the night in two. Behind it, the mansion glowed with wealth and silence. In front of it, in the dark and the storm, Olivia stood alone. Her wrapper was soaked. Her scarf clung to her head. The cooler she had carried with so much care lay in the mud, its contents spilling into the rainwater, wasted. The smell of egusi soup mixed with the sharp scent of wet earth. Her knees felt weak. She wanted to collapse right there, but pride kept her standing. Pride, not for herself, but for the son she had raised, the son who had forgotten. The rain beat down harder, running into her eyes until the world blurred. Or perhaps it was her tears. She could no longer tell the difference. Slowly, she bent down, picked up her small traveling bag, and began to walk. Her sandals slapped against the wet asphalt of the Lekki street. Expensive cars sped past, splashing water, their drivers too occupied to notice the drenched, trembling woman moving slowly along the roadside. Each step brought memories, memories sharper than the storm itself. She remembered the mornings she sold akra in Mushin, the heat of the oil burning her hands while little Maxwell stood beside her counting coins. She remembered the days she went hungry, pressing her belly with her hands so that he could eat. She remembered the nights she prayed for his future, whispering promises to God as he slept peacefully beside her. And now this. Her lips quivered as words escaped, words she did not plan, words pulled out by the weight of pain. God of the widow, hear me tonight. I carried him. I fed him. I gave everything I had. See what he has done to me. Do not let my labor be in vain. She paused under a flickering streetlight, her breath shivering. A stray dog barked in the distance, thunder cracked again, and the storm raged as though Lagos itself wept with her. Some passers-by glanced at her. One man slowed his umbrella and muttered, "That looks like Mama Johnson. But why is she alone in this rain?" Another woman hissed, "Don't you know? Her son is rich now. They say he lives in that mansion. Maybe he threw her out. These rich children, they forget." The words cut, but Olivia kept walking. Her mind drifted to Maxwell's childhood promise. "I will never forget, Mama. You are my everything." She stumbled, clutching her chest. "Maxwell," she whispered into the night. Was that promise nothing but air? Yet, in her brokenness, she did not curse him. "No," she prayed. "Kneel me in the rain, God, but lift him in your sight. If I am to carry pain, let it not destroy him. But teach him. Teach him." The city seemed to hush around her prayer. For even in her sorrow, there was strength, dignity, something no mansion could buy. When she finally reached her small rented room in Surulere, she was trembling. The bed was simple, the walls cracked, the floor damp from leaks. But she knelt anyway, her knees pressing against the cold cement, her hands lifted toward the heavens. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered again, "O God, give me strength, for this pain is heavier than the rain." And as the thunder rolled once more, her words seemed to rise beyond her tiny room, beyond the storm, into something greater than Lagos itself. Lagos was never a silent city. It was a city of voices, shouting traders, blaring horns, gossip in salons, whispers in boardrooms. And when news of Maxwell Johnson slapping his mother reached the streets, those voices exploded. It began small, like a spark. A maid from the mansion, unable to sleep after witnessing the scene, sent a hushed message to her cousin in Mushin. "Pray for Mama Johnson." Oga slapped her. "I saw it with my eyes." The cousin repeated it to neighbors. By morning, it was spreading like harmattan fire. At a bukka in Yaba, men eating umla argued. "Have you heard? Maxwell, the billionaire, slapped his own mother." God forbid. Is it not the same mother who carried him through Mushin? Money is a spirit. If it enters the wrong man, it blinds him. In the hair salons of Surulere, women clicked their tongues, twisting braids and gossip together. Imagine, after all the woman suffered. "Men, I fear them." "No, don't fear men. Fear their wives." They said. Sophia stood there and watched. By noon, social media had picked it up. A blurry video, recorded secretly by one of the guards, surfaced on Twitter. It showed Olivia at the gate, drenched in rain, pleading. The sound of the slap was faint but undeniable. Within hours, it had gone viral. #Maxwell the Ungrateful trended. Instagram filled with memes, side-by-side pictures of him in Forbes covers and her in the rain. Facebook aunties wrote long posts. This is why children must not forget their mothers. Even in his boardroom at SwiftPay headquarters, Maxwell felt the shift. His staff whispered when he passed. Investors called, their voices sharp with concern. "Maxwell," one foreign partner said over Zoom, "your image is tied to family values. This scandal, it could hurt trust in your brand." Maxwell clenched his jaw. "It's being exaggerated. People don't know the full story." But in Lagos, perception was reality. And perception had already crowned him ungrateful. Meanwhile, Olivia went about quietly, refusing to add fuel to the fire. When journalists found her in Surulere and thrust microphones into her face, she shook her head. "I will not speak evil of my son," she said softly. "He is still my child. What happened, let God judge." Her words stirred even deeper sympathy. Lagosians shook their heads. See dignity. Even after the slap, she protects him. This woman is not ordinary. In contrast, Sophia's coldness made her the villain in every conversation. Her name filled gossip blogs, her face splashed across headlines. The woman who made a son forget his mother. At a cocktail lounge in Victoria Island, one man laughed bitterly over his glass of wine. Maxwell may have money, but he has no honor. In this city, honor lasts longer than wealth. And so Lagos turned its gaze on him. Some with anger, some with pity, some with prayer. But the city never forgot, because in Lagos no secret stayed hidden. And when the streets began to speak, even kings felt the tremor. Inside the mansion's glittering walls, where marble floors gleamed and chandeliers sparkled, Sophia Johnson sat in her private lounge, a glass of red wine in her hand. The city outside roared with gossip, but inside she was calm, almost pleased. The scandal did not bother her, it thrilled her. She leaned back against the velvet sofa, her mind replaying the slap over and over, the sound of it ringing like music. To her, it was not an accident. It was proof. Proof that she owned Maxwell's heart, his mind, his pride. When she had first met him at a tech conference in Dubai, she hadn't seen a man. She had seen an opportunity. Maxwell, the rising billionaire from Lagos, hungry for validation, desperate to belong in elite circles. She had known how to smile, how to tilt her head, how to whisper the right words into his ear. By the time he realized what had happened, he was already wrapped around her fingers. Love. That had never been part of her plan. Sophia did not believe in love. She believed in influence, in wealth, in controlling the narrative. And Maxwell was her greatest trophy. But now, this scandal, it was dangerous. Not because she cared about Maxwell's reputation, but because it threatened her grip on his empire. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. A man's voice answered smoothly, deep and confident. You shouldn't be calling me on this line. Sophia smiled faintly. Relax. Do you think your wife is listening? Don't play games, Sophia. Why did you call? She sipped her wine. Because it's time we move faster. Maxwell is cracking. The city is against him. This is when we tighten our grip. Remember, our plan was never about him. It was about what he owns. The man on the other end exhaled sharply, silence following. Finally, he said, Are you sure you can handle him? Sophia's eyes glimmered. I made him slap his own mother. What else do I need to prove? She ended the call, her lips curving into a cold smile. Outside, Maxwell paced the balcony of his office, torn between pride and guilt. The rain from the previous night still lingered in his memory. The image of his mother's trembling hands, her soaked wrapper, her broken eyes. He clenched his fists. Why did I listen to Sophia? But when he turned back inside, Sophia was there, radiant in a silk gown, her perfume filling the air. She walked up to him, her hand brushing his shoulder. Darling, she whispered, her voice like honey over poison. Don't let them break you. Lagos talks too much. What matters is us. Only us. Maxwell nodded weakly, swallowing his doubt. He wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a seed of suspicion had been planted. For a son may betray his mother once, but the heart remembers, even when the mind is blinded. The rain had passed, leaving Lagos glistening under the morning sun. In Surulere, where narrow streets bustled with life, Olivia Johnson moved quietly through the neighborhood. She carried her small bag of vegetables from the market, her wrapper tied firmly, her scarf neat despite her weary eyes. Neighbors watched her with both pity and admiration. Everyone had heard. Everyone had seen the viral video. Mothers shook their heads. Fathers muttered curses under their breath. Children whispered in corners. But Olivia walked with her head lifted, not bowed. When Mama Chinyere, her neighbor, stopped her by the gate and said, Ah, Olivia, we heard what happened. That boy, Maxwell. God will judge. Olivia simply smiled faintly. Do not curse him, she replied softly. He is still my son. Her words silenced Mama Chinyere, leaving her blinking in awe. How could a woman so wronged still carry such grace? Later that day, Olivia sat in her small room, mending clothes for a local tailor to earn a little money. Her fingers, though cracked with age, moved swiftly, threading needles, patching torn fabric. Each stitch was an act of survival. Each thread a quiet prayer. And as she worked, she hummed. Soft songs of the past. Songs she once sang when Maxwell was a child, hungry but hopeful, sitting by her feet in Mushin. It was in those moments that her strength revealed itself. not in loud words or angry curses, but in calm endurance, in choosing dignity over despair. Soon, word spread that Mama Johnson, despite the betrayal, was not broken. Local women began to visit her, sitting on her wooden bench in the evenings, listening to her words. "My sisters," she told them one night as lanterns flickered, "children may forget. The world may betray. But we must not let pain turn our hearts bitter. For bitterness is a chain heavier than poverty." The women nodded, some wiping tears. They had their own stories, sons who abandoned them, daughters who married and forgot them. Olivia's strength became their lesson. Even church leaders noticed her. Pastor Emmanuel, who led the small chapel nearby, invited her to speak during women's fellowship. At first she refused, but eventually she agreed. Standing in front of a small crowd, her wrapper plain, her voice soft, she said, "I have no mansion. I have no riches. What I have is the testimony of sacrifice. My son may forget, but God has not. And when you give with love, heaven records it." Her words echoed in the room, moving hearts. Some wept openly. Others whispered prayers. Unbeknownst to her, a young journalist in the back row scribbled notes, thinking, "This woman's story must be told. The world should hear her voice, not just the scandal." Meanwhile, in Lekki, Sophia scrolled through her phone, her face tightening as she saw new headlines. "The dignity of a mother, Olivia Johnson speaks." Lagos women gather around betrayed widow. She tossed the phone aside, her jaw clenched. Olivia's quiet strength was becoming louder than her wealth. For in Lagos, respect was not always bought with money. Sometimes it was earned in the fire of pain, carried with grace. And Olivia, without even trying, was becoming a symbol. The boardroom at SwiftPay's headquarters gleamed with glass walls and chrome fittings, the kind of place where deals worth millions were sealed over polished mahogany tables. But on this particular morning, the air inside was thick with tension. Maxwell sat at the head of the table, his designer suit flawless, his face stern. Yet behind the polished exterior, his mind was heavy. His executives exchanged uneasy glances, the silence between them louder than any argument. Finally, one of the directors, a gray-haired man with decades of banking experience, cleared his throat. "Maxwell, the scandal, it's everywhere. Our customers are asking questions. Our brand has always stood on trust, on family values. Investors are nervous." Maxwell waved a hand dismissively, though his jaw was tight. "People forget quickly. Lagos loves gossip, but tomorrow they'll move on." But he was wrong. As he spoke, another executive slid a report across the table. "Sir, downloads of the SwiftPay app dropped by 30% this week. And 2 major investors have postponed their funding rounds." Maxwell's fingers tightened around his pen. 30%. That was not just gossip, it was money. And money spoke louder than pride. As the meeting ended, whispers followed him out of the room. Executives who once admired him now avoided his eyes. Staff who once cheered at his arrival now lowered their heads. The city had judged him, and the judgment was bleeding into his empire. Later that evening, at a private dinner in Victoria Island, Maxwell tried to charm potential investors. The restaurant glittered with chandeliers, the air filled with the aroma of expensive wine and roasted fish. But the smiles around the table were strained. One investor leaned back, swirling his glass. "Maxwell, we respect your genius. But tell me, if a man cannot respect his own mother, how can he respect a partnership?" The words stung like acid. Maxwell forced a smile, replying with charm, but inside something cracked. Back at the mansion, he poured himself a drink, staring at his reflection in the glass walls. His mind replayed the slap again and again, the look in his mother's eyes, the sound of the city's whispers. Sophia entered, draped in silk, her lips painted red. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Darling, ignore them. Lagos talks too much. They envy us." But Maxwell wasn't convinced. For the first time, doubt gnawed at him. In Mushin, he had dreamed of power, of money, of escaping poverty. He had built an empire from nothing. But now a single slap, one moment of weakness, was tearing it apart. And deep inside, where no one could hear, a question rose like a shadow. What if Mama's tears have a power I cannot fight? The night air in Lekki was cool, the streets lined with palm trees swaying in the breeze. Maxwell had just returned from another tense board meeting, his mind restless. The mansion glittered with lights, but for him it felt like a prison. Sophia moved about in elegance, arranging her jewelry and preparing for yet another gala. But Maxwell sat on the balcony, glass of whiskey in hand, lost in thought. That was when his phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. "Hello," he answered, his tone sharp. A familiar laugh floated through the receiver. "Maxwell Johnson. So you don't remember us again? Mushin boys don't die easy." Maxwell froze. It was Tund, his childhood friend, the boy he once shared Accra with after school, the same boy who had defended him from bullies in the muddy streets. "Where are you?" Maxwell asked cautiously. "Surelair. We heard things, my brother. We said we must see you with our eyes. Some of us never left the struggle, but we never forgot you." Against Sophia's advice, she rolled her eyes when he mentioned it. Maxwell agreed to meet them. He told himself it was curiosity, but deep down it was hunger. Hunger for a part of himself he had buried beneath marble floors and designer suits. The next day, Maxwell arrived in Surelair in a sleek black Range Rover. Heads turned as the Billionaire's convoy pulled up near a small buka. Out came Tund and another friend, Cunnel, faces older, harder, but eyes still carrying the same spark of loyalty. "Maxwell!" Tund shouted, embracing him without hesitation. "Ah, look at you. Billionaire man. You still smell like Mushin dust underneath that perfume." For the first time in weeks, Maxwell laughed. Really laughed. They sat at the buka, eating umla with their hands, the air filled with the smell of stew and the chatter of ordinary Lagos life. People watched in disbelief, Maxwell Johnson, eating with his old friends in public, no bodyguards hovering close. As they ate, Tund leaned in. "We saw the video. We saw Mama." "Maxwell, is it true? Did you slap her?" Maxwell's smile faded. He lowered his eyes. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to. Things got out of hand." Cunnel shook his head. "Maxwell, money is sweet, but it is dangerous. You can lose everything and still find it back. But if you lose your mother's blessing, my brother, even gold will turn to dust in your hands." The words struck deep, heavier than any investor's warning. That night, back at the mansion, Sophia noticed the shift in his mood. "What nonsense friends are these?" she snapped. "Do you want bloggers to say you eat umla on the roadside like a beggar? Maxwell, you are not Mushin anymore." But Maxwell didn't answer. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering the muddy streets, the lanterns, the laughter, and most of all, his mother's hands on his head when she prayed for him as a boy. For the first time, he wondered, had Sophia given him wealth but stolen his soul? The mansion in Lekki glowed with chandeliers and imported art, but for the first time since Sophia moved in, the atmosphere was unsettled. Maxwell had returned late again, smelling faintly of smoke from roasted suya and the spice of roadside stew. He no longer came straight home from the office. Instead, he lingered in Surelair with Tund and Cunnel, laughing in ways Sophia had never seen him laugh inside their marble halls. She noticed the difference. She felt it like a thorn under silk. "Maxwell," she said one evening, draped in her silk robe, diamonds sparkling at her ears. "You have investors calling, projects piling up, yet you spend time with dirty old friends in cheap bukas. Do you know how this looks?" Maxwell, seated on the edge of the bed, loosened his tie slowly. "They're not dirty. They're my friends. The only people who knew me before all this." His hand gestured at the gold-plated walls, the chandeliers, the excess. Sophia's voice sharpened. "And what do you need them for now? You are not Mushin Maxwell anymore. You are Maxwell Johnson, Africa's tech king. Stop embarrassing yourself." But this time, he didn't flinch. He met her eyes and said quietly, "Maybe Mushin Maxwell had something Lekki Maxwell lost." Her lips tightened. That sentence echoed in her head all night. Over the following days, Sophia tried harder to pull him back. She planned luxurious dinners with Lagos elites, dragged him to fashion galas, arranged photo shoots to repair his image. Yet Maxwell was restless, distracted. In board meetings, he quoted sayings from his Mushin childhood. In private, he stared out of the window, lost in thought. One night, Sophia found him sitting in the library, not with a business book, but with an old, torn exercise book. His mother's handwriting filled its pages, Bible verses, notes about food sales, prayers scribbled in shaky ink. "Where did you get that?" Sophia asked sharply. Maxwell's eyes softened. "Mama gave it to me years ago. I forgot it in storage." Tund found it and returned it. He traced a finger over the ink. She wrote, "God bless Maxwell. Let him be greater than me. But let him never forget me." Sophia felt a flash of fear. The book, the friends, the memories, all of it was pulling him away from her control. She stepped forward, placing her hand firmly over the notebook. "Maxwell, listen to me. Your past will only drag you down. If you start looking back, you will lose everything. We have worked too hard to build this life. But Maxwell gently moved her hand aside. For the first time, he said with finality, "You worked for this life, Sophia. My mother worked for me." The word stung. Sophia turned away quickly, masking her anger with a cold smile. But deep inside, her grip was loosening, and she knew it. For a man who starts to remember his roots is a man who cannot be fully controlled. In Surulere, Olivia's room was small, her walls cracked, her mat worn thin. Yet somehow, the little space glowed with a kind of peace that money could not buy. She woke early each morning, sweeping the compound with slow, steady strokes, her wrapper tied neatly, her scarf pressed flat. Her neighbors noticed something unusual. While others gossiped bitterly about betrayal, Olivia never spoke harshly of Maxwell. When someone said, "That boy disgraced you before the whole world," Olivia would smile softly and reply, "He is still my son. One day his eyes will open." Her words were strange to many. How could a woman beaten by humiliation still speak blessings? Yet the more she spoke, the more people felt drawn to her. One evening, she sat on a wooden bench with some neighborhood women. The lanterns flickered, children played nearby, and the air was heavy with the smell of fried plantain. Olivia's voice was calm but carried weight. "Do you know why I still bless Maxwell?" she asked, looking at the women. "Because curses are heavy. If I put bitterness on him, it will destroy not only him, but me too. A mother's blessing is stronger than a mother's tears. If I cannot give him wealth, let me give him prayers." The women fell silent, her words sinking into their hearts. Some wept quietly, thinking of their own children who had abandoned them. News of her wisdom spread. Soon, church leaders began inviting her to speak at women's fellowship meetings. Though shy at first, Olivia's voice grew stronger each time. "Do not measure your motherhood by how much your children remember you," she told a crowd one Saturday afternoon. "Measure it by how much you gave when they were helpless. That kind of love cannot be erased, not even by betrayal." A journalist who had once seen her in Surulere wrote a piece titled, "The Widow Who Teaches Lagos Dignity." The article spread across social media, contrasting Maxwell's scandal with Olivia's grace. Suddenly, she was no longer just the slapped mother. She was Mama Johnson, the woman whose blessing carried more weight than wealth. Even business leaders took notice. At a dinner in Ikoyi, one banker remarked, "Funny how the mother he tried to silence is now more respected than him. If she prays for you, people say it carries weight." Meanwhile, in the Lekki mansion, Sophia saw the headlines and fumed. She threw her phone on the couch, pacing angrily. This woman refuses to fade. First the scandal ruined you. Now her so-called dignity is making her the saint of Lagos. Can't you see, Maxwell? The more she speaks, the smaller you look. Maxwell didn't answer. His mind was far away, replaying his mother's voice, her calm words, her prayers. He could almost hear her singing the same lullabies she used to when he was a child. And for the first time, he began to wonder if his empire was shaking not because of investors or public opinion, but because he had turned away from the very blessing that once carried him. The mansion in Lekki was silent that night, but inside Sophia's heart, a storm raged fiercer than the Lagos rain. She paced across the marble floor, her diamond anklet jingling with each angry step. Every headline she saw on her phone deepened the crack in her pride. Mama Johnson speaks of forgiveness. The dignity of a widow moves Lagos. Olivia Johnson, the mother Lagos loves. It was unbearable. Sophia's plan had always been simple. Keep Maxwell in her hands, make his empire her own, and silence any voice that threatened her dominance. But now, Olivia's voice was louder than wealth, louder than Sophia's carefully curated image. Maxwell had changed too. He no longer hung on her words. He came home late, smelling of smoke and street food, laughter still lingering in his voice from Mushin friends. He sat longer with that old notebook his mother had given him, staring at her handwritten prayers as though they were worth more than their $1,000,000 art on the walls. Sophia knew she was losing him. That night, she picked up her phone and dialed the number she had sworn to use only in emergencies. The line clicked, and a deep male voice answered. "You again," the man said. "I told you, careful." Sophia's tone was sharp. "Listen to me. If I lose Maxwell, I lose everything. This woman, his mother, is poisoning him with her humility. The city worships her now. We need to act." The man's silence stretched. Finally, he asked, "What do you want?" Sophia's eyes glimmered cold. "Destroy her. Not with death. That would make her a martyr. Ruin her reputation. Make Lagos doubt her. If the city turns on her, Maxwell will return to me. The man sighed heavily, but greed laced his voice. And what's in it for me? Sophia smiled, her lips curving like a blade. When Maxwell's empire becomes mine, so does the money. You'll get your share. Later that week, strange stories began surfacing online. Anonymous blogs claimed Mama Johnson had abandoned Maxwell as a child, that she was a witch from the village, that her dignity was just a disguise. At first, people dismissed them as lies. But the more the stories spread, the more some began to question. In Lagos, rumors were as powerful as headlines. Meanwhile, Sophia played her role well at home. She smiled at Maxwell, touched his arm gently, whispered in his ear. You see? Even your mother has her secrets. Don't let the city fool you. But Maxwell's eyes were not as trusting as before. He studied her carefully, the seed of suspicion already planted. And somewhere in Surulere, Olivia knelt by her bed, her voice steady despite the lies flying across the city. God, she prayed, let truth be my shield. Let my son see light in the middle of their darkness. Sophia thought she was tightening her grip, but every desperate move only pulled Maxwell further toward the truth. The Lecky mansion was quiet, but Maxwell could not sleep. He lay on the king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. Sophia slept peacefully beside him, her breathing steady, her perfume lingering in the sheets. But his mind was at war. He remembered his mother's face that rainy night, the way her voice broke when she pleaded. Maxwell, my son. He remembered the sting in his palm when he slapped her. The memory came like a sharp knife, cutting him each time. He turned restlessly, got up, and walked to the balcony. From there, he could see the city lights stretching endlessly. Lagos was alive, buzzing with cars, music, and dreams. He had built so much, yet inside he felt hollow. Maxwell pulled out the notebook his mother had given him, the one filled with her prayers. He ran his fingers across her handwriting. Lord, let my son never forget where he came from. May his wealth never blind him to love. May his heart remain soft. Tears filled his eyes. He slammed the notebook shut, ashamed. He had done the very opposite. On his phone, he scrolled through headlines. Some praised his mother's wisdom. Others carried ugly rumors accusing her of witchcraft and abandonment. He clenched his jaw. The lies unsettled him, but what unsettled him more was Sophia's reaction. Every time a rumor surfaced, Sophia repeated it too quickly, almost eagerly, as though she wanted him to believe. She was never what you thought, Maxwell, she whispered one night, tracing his chest with her fingers. She abandoned you once, she could do it again. Don't let Lagos deceive you. But something inside him resisted her words. He remembered too clearly the sacrifices his mother made. Selling Accra to pay his school fees, walking barefoot so he could have sandals, going hungry so he could eat. How could that woman ever be a witch? Maxwell poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat in the dark study, his laptop open but forgotten. His thoughts circled endlessly, between his empire that was beginning to crumble, the investors pulling back, and his mother's calm smile in every interview clip he watched online. At 3 a.m., he picked up his phone and almost dialed her number. His hand trembled over the screen. But shame stopped him. What would he say? Mama, forgive me? Would forgiveness even heal the wound he caused? He put the phone down, buried his face in his hands, and whispered to himself, I don't know who I am anymore. Behind him, the study door creaked open. Sophia stood in the shadows, watching him. Her eyes narrowed. She saw the way he clung to that notebook, the way his thoughts drifted far from her. She smiled thinly to herself. He's slipping, she thought. But not for long. The Eco Convention Center glittered under bright chandeliers that night. The red carpet stretched across the entrance, lined with photographers snapping flashes as the city's elite arrived in sleek cars. It was the Tech Entrepreneurs Gala, the very place where Maxwell used to shine as Lagos's favorite son, the billionaire genius who turned code into castles. But this year, the whispers were different. As Maxwell and Sophia stepped out of their limousine, dressed in matching navy attire, the murmurs followed them like shadows. There's the man who slapped his mother, and his cold wife beside him. Can you believe Mama Johnson is more respected than him now? Sophia smiled for the cameras, her hand hooked tightly into Maxwell's arm. Her diamonds sparkled, but her grip was firm, almost like a chain. Maxwell forced a smile, but inside his chest burned. The evening began with speeches, wine glasses clinking, laughter echoing through the hall. But when Maxwell stepped onto the stage to give his keynote address, the tension broke open. He adjusted the microphone, his face stiff under the spotlight. Behind him, a giant screen flashed his achievements. Yet the audience's eyes held more judgment than admiration. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady but low. "I stand before you tonight not just as a businessman, but as a man searching for truth." A ripple of surprise ran through the hall. Sophia's smile froze. She hadn't approved these words. Maxwell continued. "Many of you know the stories being spread about my mother. Some call her a liar, a witch, an opportunist. But I want you to remember the truth. That woman sold bread on the streets to put me in school. She wore one pair of slippers until they broke apart, so I could wear shoes. If today I stand here as a billionaire, it is because of her sacrifice." The hall went silent. Cameras flashed. Sophia's face darkened with rage. Maxwell's voice cracked, but he pressed on. "I am ashamed of the day I raised my hand against her. Ashamed that I let pride and wealth blind me. Lagos, forgive me. And Mama, if you can hear this, forgive me too." The hall erupted in murmurs. Some clapped softly, moved by his words. Others exchanged glances, wondering if this was sincerity or strategy. Sophia, however, couldn't hold her fury. She rose abruptly from the VIP table, her chair screeching against the floor. "Enough of this nonsense," she shouted. Her voice rang out, startling the crowd. "This is weakness. Maxwell, you're letting that woman ruin you. Can't you see she's manipulating the city?" Gasps filled the hall. Phones rose, recording every second. Sophia's polished image was cracking live on camera. Maxwell turned toward her, his voice firm. "The only person manipulating me is you, Sophia." Her eyes widened. For the first time, the world saw not just a glamorous wife, but a woman unmasked, furious, desperate, exposed. The cameras caught it all. The headlines would write themselves by morning. And somewhere in her small room in Surulere, Olivia sat quietly, listening to the distant thunder. She didn't know what had just happened at the gala, but her heart felt a shift. She whispered softly, "The truth is beginning to speak." The night after the gala, Sophia locked herself inside the glass-walled penthouse suite of the mansion. The city lights of Lekki shimmered outside, but her eyes burned hotter than any neon glow. She poured herself a glass of red wine, but her hands shook so violently that it spilled onto the white rug, leaving a blood-like stain. Humiliation. That was the taste in her mouth. Lagos had seen her crack, seen her fury on stage. The videos were already viral. Hashtags filled social media. Hashtag Mama Johnson the Blessed. Hashtag Maxwell Speaks Truth. Hashtag Sophia Exposed. She scrolled furiously through her phone, each comment stabbing her pride. She's the real problem, not Maxwell. Olivia raised him. Sophia nearly destroyed him. She looks like a gold digger caught in the act. Her diamond-crusted phone slipped from her grip, clattering onto the marble floor. Her chest heaved with rage. At that moment, Maxwell walked into the room. He looked drained, his tie loose, his expression heavy. "Sophia," he said quietly, "maybe we need space. I think you should spend some time away." "Space?" She cut him off, her voice sharp like a blade. "After all I've built with you? After I stood by you, carried your name into the world? No, Maxwell. If anyone leaves, it will not be me." Maxwell sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm tired of fighting. I just want peace." Sophia's lips curled into a cold smile. "Peace? With that woman? With your mother stealing your heart and your city? No, Maxwell. If it's war she wants, war she will have." That night, she made 2 calls. The first was to a notorious gossip blogger who thrived on scandal. "I have proof," Sophia lied smoothly. "Olivia Johnson once abandoned her son. I'll send you documents. Make it your top story. I'll pay double." The second call was darker. She dialed the same shadowy contact from before. This time, her tone was ice. "Forget rumors. I want action. I want her broken. I don't care how. Make her regret ever stepping into this city." The man hesitated. "Sophia, this is dangerous. She's beloved now. If anything happens to her, suspicion will fall on you." "Then do it clean," Sophia snapped. "Do it quietly. Lagos must never trace it back to me." As she hung up, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her carefully styled hair, her flawless makeup, her designer gown. All the armor she wore to hide the emptiness within. But beneath it, her eyes burned with the madness of a woman who would rather destroy everything than lose control. And while Sophia plotted in shadows, Olivia knelt in her small Surulere room, praying softly. She didn't know what danger was coming, but something in her spirit felt heavy, as though a storm was gathering. Lord, she whispered, her palms open, be my shield when enemies rise. The city was about to witness a battle not of money, but of spirit. The morning sun over Surulere was gentle, casting soft gold across the cracked walls of Olivia's small compound. She was sitting outside on a wooden stool, peeling beans from Wamwa, when a loud knock rattled her gate. She wiped her hands on her wrapper and went to open it. Standing there was a young man with a hood pulled low over his face. He handed her a brown envelope without a word, then turned and disappeared down the street before she could ask questions. Puzzled, Olivia carried the envelope inside. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside were printed photographs, grainy, manipulated images of her with strange symbols, fires, and village shrines. A note slipped out, written in bold red ink. Confess who you really are before the city finds out. Stop poisoning Maxwell, or worse will follow. Olivia sat down heavily, her heart racing. She knew immediately this was not ordinary gossip. It was deliberate, planned malice. That afternoon, the rumors began spreading again. Blogs carried headlines. Proof emerges, Maxwell's mother tied to dark rituals. Pictures of the fake images flooded WhatsApp groups. Some people dismissed them, but others began to whisper. In Lagos, lies moved faster than truth. As she walked to the market later that day, Olivia felt the change in the air. Some women who used to greet her now looked away. A few men muttered under their breath as she passed. One even spat on the ground. Still, Olivia kept her head high. God sees me, she whispered to herself. But the threats grew bolder. That evening, as she prayed in her small room, she heard a stone crash against her window. Heart pounding, she rushed outside and found another note tied to it. Leave Lagos. Or next time, it won't be a warning. Meanwhile, across town in Lekki, Sophia sat in her luxury salon, sipping champagne as her friends laughed over the viral stories. See how quickly the city believes? She smirked. By the time I'm done, no one will even remember her dignity. But Maxwell was not laughing. He sat in his office, staring at the stories online. Something about them felt wrong, too polished, too targeted. He knew Lagos gossip well, and this was no accident. Late that night, he finally gathered courage and dialed his mother's number. For a moment, his chest tightened when her soft voice answered. Hello? Mama, he said quietly, his throat tight. Are you safe? There was silence, then a trembling sigh. Maxwell, my son, why do you ask me that now? Maxwell swallowed hard, guilt cutting through him. Because I think someone is trying to hurt you. Olivia closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. She had known it, felt it in her spirit. The storm Sophia had set in motion was now at her doorstep. But she refused to break. Maxwell, she said firmly, the God who carried me when you had nothing will carry me now. But if you truly care, then open your eyes. See who is really behind this. Maxwell gripped the phone tighter, his mind racing. For the first time, suspicion turned sharply toward the woman sleeping beside him in his mansion. Lagos moved fast, but the truth had its own way of chasing lies. Within days, the fake images of Olivia spread everywhere, stirring debates on radio talk shows and social media spaces. Yet something unexpected began to happen. The city didn't fully believe the smear campaign. At a church in Surulere, a pastor held up the viral photos during his sermon. Look at these lies, he thundered. They take the face of a widow who is nothing but prayer, and they turn her into a witch. Lagos, must we always let gossip destroy our own? The congregation erupted in agreement, many clapping, some weeping. Clips of the sermon spread online. Soon, hashtags flipped against the smear. Hashtag we stand with Mama Johnson. Hashtag truth will speak. Sophia was furious. In her Lekki spa, she threw her tablet across the room, shattering it on the floor. How is this backfiring? She screamed at her friend. I paid for silence, not sympathy. Meanwhile, Maxwell sat quietly in his office, watching the shifts unfold. The more the city defended his mother, the more his heart turned against Sophia. He noticed patterns now. Each rumor appeared right after Sophia spent long nights on her phone. Each scandal broke from bloggers she had once casually mentioned over dinner. His suspicion deepened when he checked his credit card statements and found large, unexplained transfers to media consultants. He recognized the names, bloggers famous for their gossip. One evening, he confronted her. Sophia, he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. Tell me the truth. Are you the one funding these stories about my mother? Sophia laughed, a brittle sound. Maxwell, please. Do you think I have time for such nonsense? Lagos gossip is wild. It has nothing to do with me. But her eyes flickered just for a second, and Maxwell saw it, the lie. That night, he lay awake again, replaying every moment of his rise. His mother's sacrifices. Sophia's ambitions. The empire he thought he built on love and brilliance now seemed built on betrayal and greed. Meanwhile, in Surulere, Olivia walked home from evening fellowship when she found a small crowd waiting by her gate. Men and women, strangers and neighbors holding candles. "Mama Johnson," one woman said softly, "we came to stand with you. We don't believe the lies. We want to pray with you." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. She clasped their hands, her voice breaking as she prayed with them under the night sky. The candles flickered, glowing like stars in the darkness. And in that moment, she realized something profound. Though she had been cast aside by her son, the city itself had embraced her like a mother. Back in Lekki, Sophia poured herself another glass of wine, her reflection trembling in the glass. She had won battles before, but this one was slipping through her hands. The lies she wove were beginning to choke her. And deep inside, Maxwell had already begun to plan. Not revenge, not anger, but a path to truth. A path that could expose everything.